All right. Hello. Thank you all for joining. I'm just getting this stream going here. What I will be doing is I'm going to be showing you how I'm going to go about creating a sort of wild style rose stencil. I'm going to call it a wild style just because the style I feel is actually pretty crazy. Hopefully you'll see what I mean here in this video. I'm going to kind of talk about every step of the way, step by step. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop a comment. I'll do my best to assist. I may not see every single question that comes in, and for that I apologize in advance, but I will do my best to keep up with all of the questions that come in. Hey, what's up, Irish? Thank you for joining. I appreciate you. Thank you for finally joining. Thank you all for the likes. Thank you for the support. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you all. Excuse me for clearing my throat here on live. I got you. Yeah, I am trying to do this as much as possible. I think this is going to be my third live stream now. I'm still not like totally familiar with everything, but I'm getting there. I'm learning it as I go. For those who are joining, I appreciate you. Thank you all for joining. If you're just joining, what we're going to be doing today, or at least for me, what I'm going to be sharing with you is how I go about creating a sort of wild style rose design. I'm going to show you from beginning to end here. So I'm going to be using Procreate for this demonstration on my iPad. So I don't know if this is going to be, applicable to Android or other operating systems because I'm using iOS. So for that, I do apologize in advance as well. So from here, I have Procreate open, and this is just a standard 8.5 by 11, same size as a standard stencil paper size. As you can see right here within my layers section, I have loads of various different roses. Now with flowers, we can take them with our phone, we can get them from various websites, wherever we want, we can go ahead and source these flowers from. So you can see that I do have an array of different roses. I'm going to demonstrate from the beginning with color and kind of just work my way all the way to the end of the process here. So for this, I'm going to begin with selecting the rose that kind of inspires me the most. So what that means is, like, for example, this first one's actually a pretty good place to begin. You can see that I have a pink rose right here. What I want to do first and foremost is I want to make this black and gray. So I'm going to go up to this adjustments tool right here, and then I'm going to go to hue, saturation, and brightness and take the saturation all the way down, therefore making it black and gray. And then from here, I'm able to kind of do as I want. Now that word wild within the wild style, the term wild style within this video here is where this next point comes from. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a feature that's built in Procreate, and it's called warp. I'm going to navigate over here to this little tool right here, and I have an assortment of different tools down here. I have freeform, uniform, distort, and warp. I'm going to focus on warp for now, and this is where I make this rose truly one of a kind, so to speak. To do that, I'm going to use these points and any other point within this grid right here to kind of adjust and maneuver and manipulate this rose as I see fit. What that means is, for example, this kind of screams out. So I'm going to drag this way, and I'm just going to begin to manipulate and warp all of the petals. This style may not be for everyone, but it is definitely unique, and it's growing on me really quick. This is something that I'm actually loving lately, these sort of wild style designs. I'll bring more videos on this on my YouTube channel, but for now I want to kind of show you how I go about creating the stencils. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of use these points to begin warping this rose in a manner that I see fit. And I really like to get crazy with the petals and the shape of the overall rose. And so I brought this out right here. And I'm going to kind of I want to keep this center the same. I don't want this to warp too much. What I'm focusing on is warping these outer petals right here. Since I am getting close to the grid and getting off the grid, I'm going to go back to uniform and I'm going to make this rose smaller so I have more space to work with. So the first part is kind of just using my artistic, I guess, preferences and figuring out a rose shape that I like using these features. That's what I'm doing first here. Hey, I appreciate you. Thank you, Have. Thank you for joining. I appreciate it. Those who are joining, I appreciate it. Those who've been around, thank you very much. If you're just joining, I'm sharing with you how I go about creating a sort of wild style rose stencil. And this is going to be with a real rose, and we're going to turn this into a full line design here. So by the end of this stream, hopefully you have a little bit of information as to how to go about doing that. So right now I'm essentially warping the entire rose to something that I like. And you're probably going to hear me say the same things over and over here, as this process does require patience. I kind of mess with things and really take a look at everything to see how things can best fit. So I brought this petal up a little bit more, as you can see, and then I'm bringing the middle back as to not warp it too much. I really take my time with this process because the shape of the rose is going to be the final read. It's basically going to contribute to the final read tremendously. So I do want the shape to be something that I'm very fond of. I want it to inspire me here. So you can see I'm extending these rose petals here. So let's say, for example, I was happy with this shape right here. This is a shape that I wanted to go with. From here, I want to make it a little bit smaller, maybe around there. I think of like maybe the top of the hand, something like this. So from here, I now have my base rose. Most printers don't print this sort of design right here. They print just lines. So we have to convert this into something that we are able to tattoo, which can be tricky. So how I'm going to go ahead and do that is I'm going to add another layer here. And I'm going to use a vibrant color so that way I can see the lines over the design that I'm doing. First thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to get a smaller line weight because this design is going to be applied with dominantly shading and no hard lining. So I don't want any dominant hard lines to show. I want to use a smaller line weight when we print that in the thermal printer. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to begin to follow the entire design all the way around, essentially mapping this out with the new shape that we just created with this rose. Hey, I appreciate that. Thank you for waking up at 6 a.m. to join me here. It's much appreciated. Thank you. If you or anyone have any questions at all, I encourage you to please drop a comment below. I'll do my best to assist while I'm here live with you. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and create the first thin outline on another layer. So that's important. We want to do this on another layer. And then from here, I'm just simply going to kind of add my own little touch here and there, but not deviate from the integrity of the rose here. And this part's pretty straightforward. So from here, we are just outlining the entire thing. I kind of go through a series of like 4 different steps to complete this sort of design, and by the time I'm done, I have a full stencil with matte shading. I do have a stencil with details. When I'm done with this realistic, or from this realistic rose, it comes out to a full line design. Hopefully the angles are okay and you can kind of see what I'm doing here. And granted, you can always freehand like wild style roses. That's a perfect way to go about it. But for those who work in a similar manner that I do, this is one way that we can go careful about creating unique, custom, one-of-a-kind roses. And this is also a great way to like never run out of roses or inspiration. So I'm going to continue all the way around here. I have to kind of zoom in and out all the way through so I make sure that I'm mapping out the correct areas. It's very important that each petal is a part of each petal it's supposed to be a part of. You want the stencil to make sense, so therefore when we're applying it, we know exactly what we're going to be doing, which motions we're going to be making, and why we're making those motions. Now, unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to fast forward this part right here simply because I'm doing this live. So for those who want me to kind of speed up, I do apologize there. I'll try to be as diligent as I can, though, throughout this process. If I make any mistakes that I'm not happy with as well, definitely go back, remove them, and then kind of update the stencil to something that I am happy with. There we go. And then the same thing with right here. We're a little more than halfway through or approaching that mark here. Now, if there's any questions at the moment and I haven't seen them, for that I apologize. I'll try to get to them here in a moment. If there's any trolls that I haven't addressed, I apologize. I'll get to you in a moment as well. And then from here, I'm going to go this way. This part is very, very important. This part right here, mapping out the petals and the locations of, basically this is the mapping of where we're going to be applying the shading and everything else. So if this isn't clear, then we're not going to know where to apply the shading and how to conduct ourselves and move when we are applying the tattoo, and that could lead to really bad results. So we want to make sure that when we are mapping this out, all of it does make sense to us. I think that's really important. So I'm just about approaching the end with the main part of the lining. So right here, there's a little bit of discrepancies that don't really make sense to me. So what I am going to do is I'm going to use my artistic insight to make sense of what I don't understand here. I'm just going to go ahead and add another little detail there. And I feel that completes the entire main outline. So if I go like this, we can see that just about every single petal was covered. Now, this one right here, I'm going to leave that one out, just artistic preference. I don't want that one there. So this is going to be the first part. After this, I'm going to go ahead and add another layer. This is where I'm going to start adding and customizing this rose and getting it a little bit closer to finishing it here. And for those who are watching, I appreciate you. Those who are joining, thank you for the support very much. Takes me back to Adobe Illustrator. I've never used Adobe Illustrator, but I've heard a lot of good things about it. Toys Procreate. The real one. Hey, I appreciate the real one. Thank you for the support. Thank you for the kind feedback as well. So right here, I did create another layer. So I don't want to create this entire stencil on one layer. What I'm doing is I'm creating it on multiple layers. So I have the rose right here. As you can see, it started with that. Created the outline, which is this. And then from here, I want to go ahead and I want to start adding my shading marks. So actually right here, I feel like this can be with the outline as well. I'm going to go to my new layer and then I'm going to add my shading marks. And to do that, I'm just simply going to use a series of dotted lines like this. And I'm going to kind of mimic the shading that I see here just a little bit. I am going to also incorporate my own shading, but I do have some sort of guide to help me when need be. So therefore I do add my shading lines. I kind of just give it a general outline of where kind of shading sits here. Nothing like too complex or drawn out really, or too thought out. Sometimes I even improvise a little bit. And then so right here. There we go. Okay, so that's essentially how I see the shading. Everyone's going to do this differently. You know, where you create your shades is going to be a little bit different. However, that's how I do my shading lines. I just simply create little dotted lines where the shading is going to exist, and that's where I apply the shading. Keep in mind that the outline is on one layer, the shading mappings are also on another layer, so I have more dynamics. If I didn't like the shading placements that I added, I could just simply turn them off. I'm going to add another layer here, and this is where I'm going to want to add some leaves here. So I kind of want to fill this out a little bit more, and I kind of want to even the way that this looks here. And in order to do that, I'm going to use leaves here. I'm just going to kind of freehand those in here. Let me see my line weight. I'm going to stick with the same line weight here that I'm just going to fluctuate a little bit and get a little bit heavier of a line weight like that. And I'm going to kind of add some leaves, and that's also going to be done on the new layer. And from here, I'm going to create them with a line going like this. Let's see. That looks pretty cool like that. And then I'm going to do another little one right here. I think that looks good. And the whole point of doing the leaves here is just to even it out a little bit more. Everyone who's watching, thank you very much. I appreciate you for joining. I'm going to go over here. I could probably do just a little one maybe. And this is just, again, picking out where I feel these would best fit. I'm sure that you may feel different. You probably may even hate the placements that I'm doing right now, which is completely fine, but I do hope that my points get across. So I'm going to go ahead and do this here. I don't want them all the same size. I do want them different sizes just to create a little bit of interest. There we go. And then I can do maybe like one right here. Let's just see how one would look right here. So we can do something like that. Let me actually complete that one here. So I like the way that that read. Bring it this way. Bring it this way. And there we go. So that one looks clean right there. I do feel like this is a pretty cool look here. I do like the way that it reads. So from here, after I have these leaves, I could go back in there. I'm going to take my line weight a little bit down. I want to add these details within the leaves just to kind of fill it out a little bit more. If we remove the main design there, the main rows that we started with, this is what we have right now. This is what we are currently working with. There is a couple of more steps here. I believe I just need like 2 more steps, and I believe I'm at the finish line here with it. So what I'm going to do is go back to make sure that I'm on my leaf layer here. And then from here, I'm going to create these little detailed lines. For those who may be asking questions, I will get to you here momentarily. I apologize for the wait there. I'm going to just kind of create these details like this. All the way down there, and then I'm going to repeat the same thing. I'm going to try to line them up as best I can. You'll notice too, like if I cross over into another line that I'm not supposed to, I'll simply undo and then redo the line the way that I was supposed to do it, because I want this to read as cleanly as possible. I want the application to be as smooth as possible when I'm applying this design. So I'm going to continue adding those details on the remaining here. I decided to start tattooing, let's see, I believe in maybe 2019 or 20. I started talking about it though early on, maybe around 2017, 2016. I remember being in high school talking about me picking up tattooing. I just never really did it until around 2019 or 20. So I'm adding these details over here. And I'm going right over this other leaf that we're just kind of ignoring now. Same thing over here. And I'm going to repeat this around with the other leaves. So this is basically where we're at for those who are curious. I was kind of always exposed to tattooing though, even from a young kid. I remember being like 8 or 9, standing outside of my front yard watching my dad get a tattoo outside from one of his friends. So it was a crazy time back then in the early 90s. So I was kind of always exposed to tattooing. So like it doesn't really like surprise me that I started tattooing since it was kind of always in my life. I'm not sure if this is going to be the last leaf here that I have to do. Oh, it actually is. So after this, we get to continue to the last step. So this is basically where we're at. So now we have the main outline, we have the shading, and then we have the leaves there to kind of even everything out. I'm going to continue to add one more layer, and on this layer I'm going to take up my line weight, and I want a heavier line weight. Let's see here, one moment. Maybe something like that. And with this heavier line weight, I'm going to go and I'm going to outline the entire, basically the entire main frame of this design. So just kind of let me show you as opposed to try to explain. So I'm going to do the outer edge of the rose right here with this heavier line weight. And I'm going to continue doing that all the way around. Now, this is going to be the last step. From here, I can go ahead and print the design after I convert it to the color black, so that way the thermal printer picks it up. Kind of wanted to go live and show you all this here. Didn't want to have a long live session today, but I feel like this was actually something pretty cool to share with you. Right here. Actually, that was crossed incorrectly because this is the outer edge. And then this is actually going to go with a taper out this way to have a sharp point. And then I'm going to bring this way and then taper into that existing line. I put just as much thought into my stencils as I do my actual tattoos. And I feel like that's super important. I feel like having a clean tattoo stencil to work with kind of changes the entire flow of applying a tattoo. There we go. I'm going to continue to create this heavier line weight all the way around. And for those who are joining or who have just joined, I appreciate you. Thank you very much. For those who have been here, thank you for the support. I greatly appreciate you. I'm going to go ahead and continue. I'm going to taper in this way. And I even do tapers with digital work as well, just like I do on my tattoos. And then I'm going to navigate this way over here. And then taper in over here just a little bit. Like that. So I have the main rose outline. From here, I'm going to also apply that heavier line weight just to the outer row, just to the outer edges of the leaves. So right here, I'm not going to do that inner line. I'm going to do this one. I'm going to do this one and the rest. And the reason why I did all of this on multiple layers is because Let's say I didn't want to have a heavier line weight for this design, or the client didn't like the heavier line weight. All I have to do is go over here and just turn it off, and then I could still print it without having to do much there. There we go. And then I go over here. Actually, not that one, my bad. And then I'm gonna go over here and this one. And that right there is how I go about creating a sort of wild style rose tattoo stencil. My last step I typically do is I'm going to select one of the 5 layers. I'm going to right slide on all of them and then just select group. So that way I can move this group all together as one, as you can see here. But this is what I have. These are the results that I got. Let me mute the initial rows that we started with so that way you can see just the line design. And that is a design that is now ready to be tattooed. It has varying line weights. It has a heavier line weight. It has the leaves as well as the shading maps going on as well. So everything that I need to complete this design is here and ready to go. Now, to turn this into a design that's printable on a thermal printer, what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate that, and I'm just going to flatten that one out. I'm going to mute the original. I'm going to come up here, and then I'm going to go to hue, saturation, and brightness, and then just simply take all of that down. And that's how I turn it into a design that I can now print. Don't really know how to get that off my screen there. There we go. But there we go. That is how I go about creating wild style sort of rose designs. If anyone has any questions at all, I do encourage you to drop a comment down below. Let's see here. This stream is about me creating a wild style rose design right here. Basically, how I go about creating my stencils. You can kind of apply this to pretty much any sort of design. It doesn't have to be roses or anything like that. What needle would you tackle the thicker outline with? I'm working on the same outline. I'm working on the outline of roses. That's actually a good question. So for this rose, I think depending on the actual size. So let's say if a client came in and they wanted it a little bit smaller. Actually, bear with me here. So let's say if a client came in and they did want the design a little bit smaller. If we make it smaller, the line weight also changes. So let's say if it were maybe somewhere around this size right here, like the top of a hand, I probably would use anywhere from an 11 round liner or 14 round liner for the main outline. And then I'll use like maybe a bug pin 08 or 06 3-round liner to apply all of the shading right here. And even these little lines in here, I probably would use a smaller 3-round liner to capture that smaller line weight integrity. If the design was requested in a bigger size, like around here, which is going to be 8.5 by 11, you can see it's much bigger now in correspondence to my hand. This, I probably would bump it up to maybe an 11 or 14 round shader for the main outline. I would still use a 3-round liner for all of the shading and all this area just to be real accurate with my deposits. I would probably also still use a 3-round liner for those leaf details as well. That's pretty much exactly how I would approach it. And I was actually thinking about that as well when I was creating it. Thank you for the rose. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. If I missed any other gifts, it's genuinely I genuinely apologize about that. It's not my intent. I'm trying to communicate here and do this at the same time. So if I miss any questions, if I missed any gifts there, once again, I do apologize. Thank you very much, though, for the support. Everyone tuning in, thank you very much. I appreciate you all. Can you explain how to make it darker for the printer? Yeah, of course. Let me go over that again. So making it darker for the printer, I kind of skimmed through that part. So let's say I have this original color right here. I do it in a lighter color because it's easier for me to see as I'm creating the stencil. That's the reasoning for this right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this entire group that I just created. I'm going to turn off the old group. From here, I'm going to go to flatten. So that way it's all on one layer now. From here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate to my adjustments tool, which is up here. And then I'm going to navigate on over to hue, saturation, and brightness. And then from there, I'm going to take the saturation all the way down, as well as the brightness all the way down. You can see if I take the brightness all the way up, it's white completely. At 50, it's about gray. At 0 or none, it's complete black. From here, I would send it to the printer and print it out. Exactly, that is exactly correct, Compton. I would prefer to stipple shade this because I would like to go for that sort of textured look, and also when I use a 3-round liner, it could be really accurate with my deposits as well. So that's why I would choose to go with the 3-round liner. So that is correct, yes. Thank you for the follows. I appreciate that. Thank you all very much. Hey, Logan, what's up? Thank you for the kind feedback. So that's the rose right here. And printing it out, depending on the printer that we use, that would determine if it's able to capture these smaller inner details. The higher the DPI on a thermal printer, the more it's going to print the pixels. I think DPI stands for dots per inch. So the more DPI that a printer has, the more details it's going to print. What reasons or benefits is there to using a different starting canvas size? That's a good question. I think that, I guess for me, the only reason why I would use varying canvas size would be only because I'm doing a larger size piece. So for example, I have done a like bodysuit type of design that was a pretty large size tattoo, and I printed all of the designs on a standard 8.5 by 11, but they put together and they measured out a bit longer than, I would say they're probably about 3 feet. I don't know how long that fake skin was exact, but it was a large piece of skin. So when I did that, I still didn't even change the canvas size until the very end. So I think that's the only real, I'm sorry, I'm trying to think out loud here. I think that's the only real benefit is when we are changing the canvas size, it's probably to compensate for the tattoo size that we are going to be doing. So for me, the larger the tattoo size, if it's going to be like a bodysuit, then I'm going to need a canvas size to reflect that size of the body. That's the only way that I would really change my canvas size. Or if you're doing like some sort of digital art and there were specific requirements for the art that you're making in terms of the ratio size, that's another reason. For me, I always work with 8.5 by 11. It really never changes. Voltage for stippling. So, like Compton said, it would really depend on your technique and hand speed. But for me, when I stipple, I always like to start at 5 volts. If the machine is a bit more powerful or hitting harder, I'll take it down to 4 volts. But I'll typically stay within 4 to 5 volts. I've seen some artists even stipple at 8 volts. So it's really going to be to each their own and what you are comfortable with. Hey, that's awesome. I'm glad. I'm glad that you're enjoying this live here. I'm glad that this is kind of useful for you. If anyone has any questions about any sort of technicalities here that I did, please feel free to ask. I'm going to go ahead and do my best to assist here before I kind of conclude this live stream. If, for example, if I told you 5 volts for stippling, but your machine hits harder and it hits like a coil type of machine, then 5 volts may be way too high. I think like a coil would typically run like around maybe 1 or 2 volts for stippling. So it's really hard to say and, determine what voltage is right for us until we are actually doing it to see what we are comfortable with and what we need for our application. Now, I wanted this streamer here to be more of a quick one here. I do appreciate you all joining. If there's any last questions, I'll go ahead and stick around for a bit more and I will answer them. But other than that, this would be a great place to conclude this stream tonight. Hey Daniel, I had a question about your stipple shading video. Does that mean that? That's a good question. So yes, when it comes to stipple shading, I use just the very tip of my needle so that way I can layer up my layers and my shades and my tones, so that way I don't go too dark too quick. I also prefer to use the very tip of my needle, so that way I can get more time to work on a human skin. So for me, whenever I am shading, I don't approach it like lining, meaning whenever we're lining, we have to capture a specific needle integrity. So therefore, we're gonna have to move at a certain, hand speed to voltage, as well as keeping at a certain needle depth. With shading, that fundamental, that variable completely goes out the window. That's not something that we consider. With shading, we're not really focused on how deep each individual dot goes. I'm more so focused on the layer and the consistency of those layers. In terms of how it holds up, I've never had like a stipple tattoo that I've done on human skin fall out, or let alone like lighten up to a point that I couldn't anticipate. So for me, I personally love the healing results. On top of that, stipple shading, that technique is one of the easiest techniques that's easiest for the skin to heal from. So that's another big reason why I love stipple shading. But another big, I think the main reason for me is just because I can be real accurate with where I put my ink, and I love the way that it looks and reads. I did a stipple shade on my leg a while back, and it still reads nicely and it still reads cleanly. I don't have any issues with it. I'll go ahead and actually post a picture, an updated picture of that on the community section of my YouTube, so that way y'all can check that out. What type of ink do you prefer for this piece? That's a good question. You're welcome, Fish. Fish. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, so forgive me for the mispronunciation there. You're welcome, Iris. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you. I'll go ahead and message you on Patreon as well. Thank you for joining. For this one, I would use a combination of like 20, 40, 60, and 80. I think for any tattoo that I would do that's going to require me to use a gray wash, I'm always going to use 20, 40, 60, 80. Sometimes I'll make some shades, or actually it's probably very rare that I'll step outside the 20, 40, 60, 80, just because I feel like I could accomplish everything that I need to accomplish with the 20, 40, 60, 80 gray tones. And I'll also have straight black as well. For everyone who's joining, thank you very much for spending your time with me. Thank you for joining this live. Thank you all for asking questions. I greatly appreciate you all. Yeah, of course, Ivy, no problem. Thank you for joining as well. I appreciate your time. Thank you. Some streams will be longer, some will be shorter. I feel like this one has been almost 40 minutes, so it's not necessarily a shorter stream, and it's not necessarily going to be like the past couple where I stayed on for an hour plus. They're always going to be different. I'm also going to be doing a follow along with you all live, so stay tuned to the community section of my YouTube channel. That's where I'm going to be putting out the stencils that you can download for free to follow along with me here live. Hey, thank you, Have Not. I appreciate you joining. Thank you. Have a good night. I appreciate you. How do you choose? Yeah, me too. I actually have an opaque gray tattoo ink set that I'm going to be using as well. So I'm excited to check that out with these roses as well. I'm going to be doing these roses in a step-by-step follow-along on my Patreon. But we're also going to be doing step-by-step follow-alongs here in these live streams as well. As I just mentioned, in the community section, on the community section tab of my YouTube channel, I will be uploading the free stencils there that you all can download, print them out to follow along with me live. I'll announce the date for you all so that we can kind of line it up to your schedule. But yeah, so that's how I'm going to go about that there. Let's see here. What's good? How do I trace over an image and then remove the image? I think that's what you're asking me essentially. For that, how I did that was, as you can see, it started with, let me go ahead and show you. So it started with this row. Actually, the rose was completely different. I warped the rose to make it look like this. And then from there, what I did was I added another layer by hitting that plus up there. And then from there, I was able to create this outline. And then all I have to do is just mute this in the back, and now I have this outline without that rose there. And then I kind of just created another layer, added the shading dot lines as you see right there, repeated the process of creating 2 more layers to add the leaves, one last one to add the heavier line weight, and that's how we got this design right here. And then if I just click that button to remove the rows, we have the entire outline. I hope that helps right there. Okay, I feel like this is a great place to conclude this video. For those who are watching, I'm truly grateful. Thank you for your time. Thank you for joining. Thank you for being so kind as well throughout these live streams that I'm doing here. I'm having a lot of fun with you all going live. I assure you that it will get more funner. I want to bring a lot more interactive live streams for you. So please keep coming down. I genuinely appreciate the support. If anyone else has any questions, please feel free to drop the comment on the live stream after it uploads to my YouTube channel. I'll go ahead and do my best to assist you in the best possible direction. Once again, I know you've heard me say this a lot, but I'm genuinely grateful for your time. I'm grateful for your support. I'm grateful for you all joining me here tonight. Thank you all. I hope that you can take something from this and apply it to you and your workflow on your end. I appreciate you all joining once more. Have a great night, everyone.